Have you ever fantasized about the life of a pirate? The thrill of open seas, hidden treasures, cannon fire under moonlit skies, and fearless rebels with eye patches and flintlocks. Forget the Hollywood fairy tales. The real world of pirates was dirtier, darker, and far more savage than anything you've seen on screen. It wasn't just about treasure maps and parrots. It was about survival, betrayal, mutiny, storms, and unholy codes written in blood. This is not fiction. These are the forgotten pages of maritime history whispered through salt and bone. In this journey, you will board a real pirate ship, from the stench of the cargo hold to the roar of battle at sea. You'll feel the hunger, the fear, and the ecstasy of loot. You'll meet the crew, misfits, murderers, and mercenaries, and sail through typhoons, blockades, and cursed islands. This is the ultimate pirate adventure, from the bottom of the bottle to the top of the mast, ready to hoist the black flag. Asterisk, the sun had not yet risen when the creaking of wooden planks echoed through the port of Port Royal. A thick fog clung to the docks like ghostly breath, and rats scurried over rotting ropes and shattered barrels. Hidden between the shadows of two merchant ships was a smaller vessel, battered and bruised by years of wind and salt. Her name was the Widow's Grin, and no name could have been more fitting. She had seen 100 storms and buried twice as many men. Her black sails were rolled tightly, but even still, they carried the scent of gunpowder and betrayal. Below deck, the crew gathered in silence. Their faces were lit by the dim orange glow of a single lantern swinging from the ceiling. It smelled of sweat, mold, and dried blood. In the center of the circle stood Captain Elric Blackthorn, a man whose left eye had been replaced by a polished ruby, and whose beard was said to have been dipped in the blood of a Spanish admiral. He raised a curved dagger and stabbed it into a wooden barrel between them. The sound made the youngest among them flinch. "Swear it now," he growled, "or get out and rot in the gutters like cowards." One by one, they stepped forward, placing their hands on the hilt of the blade. The oath was not spoken aloud. No words could capture what it meant to live and die by the pirate's code. It was a bond of blood, forged in the fire of revenge, survival, and endless hunger for gold. These were not loyal men, but they shared one thing in common. They had nothing left to lose. Each oath sealed another soul to the ship and the Widow's. Grin became more than wood and sail. She became a beast with many hearts and one purpose. Above deck, the fog began to lift, revealing a sea as flat as a mirror and just as cold. The sails were unfurled with practiced hands, and the anchor creaked up from the black depths below. Elric took the wheel, his eyes scanning the horizon as if looking for a ghost he once knew. The ship groaned as it shifted, and for a moment, it felt as though the ocean itself recognized her. A gull screamed in the distance, circling twice before vanishing into the mist. The crew was quiet. Every man knew the silence before a storm. As the coastline faded behind them, the captain barked orders like a man possessed. "Full wind to the northeast. We sail for Devil's Maw." No one questioned him, though the name made a few men glance at one another in unease. Devil's Maw was not marked on most maps, and those who dared name it often whispered instead of spoke. It was a cove said to hold Spanish gold, cursed by monks, where ships vanished under a moonless sky, and sirens sang in languages no man should understand below deck. The ship's youngest crew member, Tomas Finch, barely 14, orphaned by war and hunger, clutched his blanket and stared at the ceiling. He had never been on a ship before. The movement of the sea made his stomach churn and his heart race. But something else troubled him more deeply, the way the captain's ruby eye had glinted in the lantern light. It looked alive, and when Tomas took the oath, he could have sworn the blade had pulsed just once, like a heartbeat. The wind howled, louder now, like the first scream of something waking from a long sleep. The sails snapped, the ship leaned hard to port, and barrels rolled across the deck. Lightning cracked far in the east, splitting the sky in half. The crew rushed to tighten ropes and lock down the cannons. Elric stood firm, grinning like a mad prophet. "Now it begins," he muttered to no one in particular. "The sea's test. She wants to know if we're worthy." And so began the first day aboard the Widow's Grin, a day that would become legend. Asterisk rain lashed the sails like whips from the heavens. The sky was a canvas of black and steel, and the Widow's Grin shuddered under the force of each crashing wave. The crew worked without pause, soaked to the bone, their voices lost in the roar of wind and water. Elric Blackthorn clutched the wheel with both hands, his knuckles white, teeth bared. "She's testing us," he shouted. "Don't you dare." Lightning arced above them like the crack of a whip, illuminating the monstrous waves towering over the deck. One of the mainsails tore in half with a sound like bones breaking. Rigging snapped loose, and a sailor was hurled overboard, vanishing into the foam without a scream. The others kept working, not daring to look down. Death came quickly at sea, and grief could wait until dawn if it ever came. Tomas Finch had never felt fear like this. He clung to a rope as thick as his arm, rain blinding him, salt stinging his lips. His thoughts drifted to his mother's, hands worn and warm, now lost to memory. Below deck, crates slammed against the walls, and rats scrambled for shelter. Gunpowder barrels were roped tight to prevent detonation, but each thunderclap made the crew fear the worst. Quartermaster Briggs, a man with a glass eye and steel hooks for hands, barked orders with brutal clarity. "Reinforce the hold. If we lose the powder, we all go to the depths." Men moved in silence, haunted by the screams of the missing dot. The helm, Elric's eyes gleamed with manic joy. He lived for storms like these, moments where fate balanced on the edge of a blade. "She's still with us," he whispered to the sea. "You'll have to do better than this to break my ship." As if in answer, a wave rose like a mountain, curling above them with divine fury. It crashed onto the deck, swallowing the bow, and dragging crates, bodies, and dreams across the boards. When the wave passed, there was silence. The storm was not over, but it had paused, a breath between curses. Tomas opened his eyes and found himself half submerged, coughing seawater and blood. A sailor's hand grabbed his collar and hauled him up. "Move, boy," came the cry, "unless you want the sea to finish what she started." Shivering, Tomas stumbled to his feet, soaked but alive. That night, the storm faded like a dying scream. The crew collapsed where they stood, too exhausted to pray. Stars emerged in the sky like forgotten promises. The ocean calmed its rage, spent, but the damage was done. 3 men lost, a sail gone, a barrel of food spoiled. And yet the Widow's Grin still sailed. Bruised, yes, but unbeaten. In the captain's quarters, Elric poured himself a glass of stolen French brandy. He stared at the map before him, fingers tracing a jagged line toward Devil's Maw. He chuckled softly, raising his glass. "You tried, which," he said to the sea, "but this ship isn't ready to die." Outside, Tomas watched the horizon, wondering how many more storms waited in the dark. A week later, a lookout in the crow's nest spotted sails on the horizon. 3 masts, no guns, he called down. Merchant ship, flying Dutch colors. The deck erupted with energy. Pirates raced to their stations, securing ropes, prepping cannons, sharpening cutlasses. Elric took the helm with a predator's grin. "A fat cow for slaughter," he said. "Let's see what she's worth." Briggs organized the boarding crew. Pistols were loaded, blades oiled, and faces smeared. With charcoal to appear more fearsome, Tomas was given 2 powder horns and a dagger, his first weapon. "Stay close," Briggs warned. "Don't be a hero, and don't blink." Tomas nodded, heart pounding like a drumbeat. He had dreamed of battle, but now felt the weight of it pressing on his chest. The widow's grin approached fast, cutting across the waves like a wolf. The merchant ship tried to flee, but her sails were too heavy, her crew too slow. A warning shot fired from the pirate's port cannon boomed across the sea. The ball missed by design, splashing beside the hull. A message: "We could sink you, we just haven't yet." Grappling hooks flew thudding into the merchant's rails. Pirates swung aboard with war cries, boots thudding on polished decks. Elric led the charge, ruby eye gleaming, sword drawn. The merchant sailors dropped their weapons quickly. Most were boys or old men. There was no honor in resistance, only death. The ship was taken within minutes, the cargo hold unlocked. Inside were barrels of sugar, sacks of rice, bolts of silk, and best of all, crates of gunpowder. Gold coins hidden in hollowed-out Bible covers. Elric held one aloft, laughing. Holy salvation, indeed. The crew celebrated, drinking the merchant's wine and singing filthy sea shanties. It was their first true plunder, and it tasted like victory. But not all were pleased. One merchant sailor spat on the deck and cursed the pirates. "You'll burn," he hissed. Elric didn't flinch. He simply took a gold coin from his pouch and pressed it into the man's palm. "For the ferryman," he said before throwing him overboard. Mercy, in pirate terms, was a slippery thing. By nightfall, the merchant ship was stripped of everything but its sails. Elric ordered it burned, a warning to others. As flames licked the sky, Tomas watched the fire reflect in the sea and wondered what kind of man he was becoming. Days after the raid, the sea turned eerily calm. No wind, no waves, just a flat, endless mirror. The crew grew restless, pacing the deck like caged animals. In that stillness, something surfaced. A barrel, floating alone, bobbing gently like it didn't belong. Curious and cautious, the crew hauled it aboard. It reeked of death. When they pried it open, they found bones human, picked clean and clutched between the ribs. A rolled parchment sealed in wax.elric broke the seal, revealing a map unlike any they'd seen. The lines were jagged, the ink faded, and the writing in an ancient hand. At its center was a red X and a name scratched with trembling fingers: Isla de Sangre, Blood Island. The crew gathered around, whispering stories they'd heard of cursed treasure, of ships that vanished, of whispers in the fog. Elric said nothing for a long time. Then, with a slow grin, he said. Set the course, Briggs protested. It could be a trap, bait left to draw fools. But Elric shook his head. Or it's the kind of fortune only madmen reach. He handed the map to Tomas, who was now learning to read by candlelight. Memorize it, the captain said. If I fall, you take us there. The boy's hands trembled as he took the parchment. He felt its weight, not of paper, but of history, death, and destiny. Below deck, the crew debated their fate. Some spoke of abandoning ship before reaching cursed waters. Others welcomed the risk. Better to die chasing gold than rot on shore, muttered one-eyed Vance, chewing dried squid. The code held them all. None dared mutiny. Not yet. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and doubt, like rot, spreads quietly as night fell. The ocean came alive. Bioluminescent waves sparkled around the ship like stars fallen into the sea. Fish glowed beneath the surface, and strange songs drifted from the dark. No one slept well. Tomas awoke to a whisper in his ear, but when he turned, no one was there. He clutched the map beneath his shirt, certain it pulsed against his chest like a second heartbeat. In the captain's quarters, Elric traced the map by lantern light. He spoke aloud to the skull nailed to the wall beside his desk, the remains of an old rival. They said I'd die poor, he muttered. Let's see how wrong they were. The skull, of course, said nothing, but outside, the waves rose, soft at first, then louder, as if something ancient had stirred beneath. By morning, the wind returned, fierce and fast. The widow's grin surged forward, sails full. The crew awakened from fear into purpose. The map had spoken, and pirates do not ignore omens, especially ones carved in bone. Asterisk, 2 days later, a ship appeared on the horizon, still, silent, sails torn, no flag, no movement. As they neared, it became clear, not a soul moved aboard. She's adrift, Briggs said, and cursed, no doubt. Elric stared long through his spyglass, then made a decision. We board, bring torches, and pistols loaded. The crew hesitated. Pirates feared nothing but ghosts, yet none dared disobey. They approached carefully, the widow's grin gliding alongside like a shadow. Grappling hooks landed without. Resistance. Tomas was among the first to cross, heart thundering in his chest. The deck of the ghost ship was silent. Ropes swayed without wind. The sails flapped in a rhythm too steady to be natural. Blood stained the rails. No bodies, no signs of struggle, only absence. Below deck was worse. Hammocks hung empty. Tables were still set, half-eaten meals rotting where they were left. A single candle flickered in the captain's quarters, though no one had lit it. On the wall, scratched deep into the wood, were 4 words. They came from below. The room was colder than the sea outside. Even Elric's hand trembled as he traced the writing. In the cargo hold, they found crates of spices and silver bars stacked high, worth a king's ransom. Yet the crew didn't cheer. Something felt wrong. Take it, Elric ordered, voice low, quickly. Men moved fast, hauling treasure back to their own ship, eyes darting to the shadows. Tomas stayed behind a moment, too long, and heard it, a gurgle, wet and inhuman, coming from a locked chest in the far corner. He ran, stumbling up the stairs, breath caught in his throat. There's something down there, he shouted. Briggs and Elric exchanged looks, then gave the order, cut her loose. The pirates fled the ghost ship, leaving it to drift once more. They didn't speak of it again, but every man who boarded had nightmares for weeks. Some never slept again. That night, the silver was counted and locked away. Elric watched the horizon, the ghost ship now a dark smudge behind them. The seas full of things we're not meant to understand, he said, but we'll take her gold just the same. Tomas, wrapped in blankets, stared at the stars and wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The next day, they found claw marks on the outside of the hull, too high, too wide to belong to anything human. Asterisk the treasure. From the ghost ship brought tension instead of joy. The crew whispered of omens, of curses, of bad luck clinging to silver like mold. Rations spoiled overnight. A man fell from the mast without reason, and 2 others went blind for hours before recovering. Fear began to grow faster than loyalty. When fear grows, mutiny follows like a shadow. It was Briggs who first heard the plan. In the dark of night, voices rose from the lower hold, men plotting to take the ship, lock Elric in chains, and sail to safe harbor. "The captain's mad," one hissed. "That map will kill us all." Briggs didn't confront them. Instead, he waited. He knew pirates. Their courage was always weakest in daylight. By morning, he told Elric everything. The captain said nothing at first, only poured a cup of rum and looked out at the sea. "I knew it had come," he murmured. "They always do, in the calm before the blood." Rather than wait, Elric acted. He called a meeting on deck, the crew circling like hungry dogs. He read the code aloud, all 13 rules, then stepped aside. "The men who would break this code, step forward," he said. "You'll not be killed, only judged." Silence. Then 4 men stepped forth, eyes down, hands twitching toward blades. Elric smiled. "Thank you for your honesty." Then he drew his pistol and shot the first through the head. The others reached for weapons, but Briggs was faster. Within moments, 3 bodies bled out on the deck. No trial. One sailor whispered. Elric turned on him, eyes blazing. They judged themselves when they chose fear over honor. The man said nothing else. The deck was washed in silence, and the blood was left to dry. A lesson written in red dot. Tomas watched, horrified. But deep down, he understood. On a pirate ship, leadership wasn't given. It was claimed and defended with steel. And Elric, for all his madness, had claimed it again. That night, the men drank, not in celebration, but in solemn reminder. Loyalty was the only anchor that mattered. At last, land appeared, jagged cliffs rising from the mist like broken teeth. Isla de Sangre had no beach, only black rock and dense jungle. The crew stood at the rails, eyes wide, mouths dry. "We're here," Elric said, the map clenched. In one hand, a pistol in the other. No one cheered. The island gave off a presence, heavy and watchful. It didn't feel like land. It felt like a trap. They dropped anchor in a narrow inlet and sent a rowboat with 12 men, Elric among them. Tomas joined, his heart pounding. He clutched a satchel of powder flasks, a blade at his side. The water was unnaturally still, the oars making no sound. As they reached the rocks, the jungle loomed above like a wall of green fire. Birds cried in strange tones, too human, too sharp. The air smelled of rot and copper, blood, vines twisted like ropes, and old stone ruins peeked through the trees, covered in moss and claw marks. This place is older than memory, whispered. They pushed inland, hacking a path through ferns and silence. No animals moved, no insects buzzed. The jungle breathed with them or against them. Tomas could feel it in his teeth. They found bones first, not buried, but arranged. In circles, runes carved deep into the skulls. Some were still wet. A sailor vomited. Another began to pray, only to be silenced by Briggs's glare. "We came for gold, not ghosts," he growled. But the fear was growing, thick as the vines around them. They pressed on, deeper and deeper, the trees closing behind like jaws. At the center of the island stood a stone altar covered in dried blood and ash. Gold coins and jewels glittered in piles, the kind of treasure men kill for. Elric approached slowly, almost reverently. "Here," he said, "this is it." The crew began to grab what they could, stuffing bags and shirts. Tomas picked up a ruby the size of his fist, and the screaming began. It came from the trees, not one voice, but many, ancient, broken, endless. The jungle lit with movement, shadows that had eyes, shapes that weren't men. "Run," someone screamed. The pirates dropped their loot and fled through the brush. Arrows flew from nowhere, piercing trees and flesh. 2 men fell. Another vanished into a pit that hadn't been there before. They made it back to the boat, bleeding, breathless, and terrified. The treasure they kept was only what they could carry in their arms. As the boat rowed back to the widow's grin, the screams continued, echoing across the black water, even though no one remained behind. It was not the sound of pain, it was hunger. Back on the ship, the crew moved like ghosts. The treasure sat in the captain's quarters, blood-stained, cursed, and silent. No one dared touch it again. One man who did woke up blind in both eyes. Another had nightmares, so vivid he tried to claw his own throat. Elric said nothing. He spent hours staring at the ruby Tomas had picked up, turning it slowly in his fingers. Briggs demanded they throw the gold overboard. "It's poison," he growled. "It'll kill us all." Elric shook his head. "It's ours, and we paid in blood." The crew began to split, those who still believed in the treasure, and those who believed it would destroy them. Tension hung over every meal, every rope tied, every whisper in the dark. Tomas wandered the deck, unable to sleep. He kept thinking of the altar, the screams, the way the island had watched them. He clutched the ruby, now wrapped in cloth and hidden under his hammock. It burned in his dreams, whispered in his ears. He tried throwing it into the sea once, but found it under his pillow the next day. That's when he stopped trying. The ship itself began to groan more than usual. Nails came loose, wood splintered for no reason. The sea grew restless. Storms appeared without warning, and compasses spun wildly. Elric stood at the wheel like a statue, refusing to change course. "Let the sea try," he'd mutter. "We're already damned." His laugh grew stranger each day, no longer full of joy, but of something cracked. 3 men jumped overboard one night. They said they saw hands reaching for them from the walls. None were seen again. Their hammocks were empty, their boots still neatly placed. The crew began sleeping in shifts, always in pairs. No one dared go below deck alone. The ship had changed, or something inside it had awakened. Still, they sailed on. Gold does that to men. Even when it kills, they chase it. Tomas knew it now. The treasure wasn't wealth, it was a test. the kind only fools take willingly, and they had all passed the point of return. One night, Elric summoned Tomas to his cabin. He handed him the ruby. "It chose you," the captain said. "I thought I could master it, but it feeds on younger blood." Tomas wanted to scream, to run, but he took it, and when he did, he saw something behind the captain's eyes, something ancient and afraid. The following day, the sky turned the color of rust. The air was thick and unmoving. Birds dropped dead from above, their bodies striking the sails like pebbles. The widow's grin creaked as if it too wished to flee. The ocean beneath churned with strange shapes. Tomas clutched the ruby, now bound in 3 layers of cloth, but its heat seeped through like coals. Elric stood at the bow, arms wide, shirt open, windless hair hanging like vines. "Let it come," he whispered. The crew stood back. No one followed him anymore, not out of respect, but out of fear. He was no longer captain, he was a vessel, and the thing inside him wanted out. That night, the sea turned black. A wall of water rose, not a wave, but a wall, still as death, stretching across the horizon. It hovered there, humming. Then came the scream, the same from the island, now in the sky, in the sea, inside their skulls. Men dropped to their knees, bleeding from ears, clawing their faces. Tomas fell too, clutching the ruby, eyes rolling back, and then silence. When he awoke, the storm had passed, but the widow's grin was no longer the same. Her sails were torn, her mast cracked. Elric was gone. No body, no blood, only his coat, folded neatly on the deck. In its pocket was a single note. "I paid the price. Now it's yours." Tomas held the note in trembling hands. He didn't need to ask what it meant. The curse had moved on to him. The crew named him captain by sunrise. No one else wanted it. No one else dared. Tomas, now 14 and already haunted, took the wheel. The ruby hung around his neck, pulsing like a living heart. "Where to?" Briggs asked. Tomas didn't answer. He just pointed east toward the rising sun, toward more legend, more blood. Below deck, the treasure slept, but only for now, and the sea waited. Tomas stood taller now, though he still wore boots too big and a shirt too thin. The ruby hung heavy beneath his coat, as if dragging the past behind every step. The crew had begun calling him Red-Eye, half in jest, half in fear. They said the gem had changed him. His voice was deeper, his stare too steady, but none could deny he had survived what Elric hadn't. And in pirate lore, survival alone was a kind of crown. The new course was unspoken, east, into waters no chart dared name. The wind obeyed Tomas, as if the sea knew something the crew did not. Food grew scarce, rats became meals. Sickness swept below deck, but the worst plague was silence. The men stopped singing. Laughter had dried like old rum. Briggs watched Tomas, closely wondering whether to protect the boy or kill him. One night, a storm rose without warning. No clouds, no thunder, just walls of water. The widow's grin was swallowed whole, mast snapping like a matchstick. Barrels burst, men screamed, ropes flailed like whips. Tomas stood at the helm, unmoving. The ruby glowed beneath his chest, casting red light across his face. He raised his hand, and the sea fell still. In the silence that followed, the crew stared at him, not with admiration, but awe. Superstition had roots deep in every sailor's soul, and they now feared Tomas more than the ocean. When he spoke, they listened. When he walked, they cleared a path. He was no longer a child. He was something else, something the sea had claimed and not let drown. The next day, they found wreckage floating, pieces of a Spanish galleon, one believed lost years before. Among the debris, gold coins, still warm, and a locket containing a picture of Elric Blackthorn. No body, just relics. Tomas kept the locket, wordless. The sea had returned it for a reason. Below deck, Tomas spoke to the ruby, not aloud, but inwardly, and sometimes it answered, not in words, but in visions, maps without ink, names without tongues, buried horrors calling to him in sleep. The crew never knew how Tomas found fresh water or avoided reefs hidden to the naked eye. They only knew he knew, and so they followed. By the end of the week, the widow's grin was patched and moving again, slower, yes, but alive, like her captain, scarred, unholy, and still chasing whatever lay beyond the horizon. Beyond fear, beyond death. The wind died again, not with warning, but with indifference. For 3 days, they floated under a sun that refused to blink. The heat boiled their minds. Water was rationed. Salt crusted their skin like a second hide. Men grew paranoid. One accused his shadow of following him. Another tried to eat his boots. Madness at sea was not poetic. It was slow and sticky. On the 4th day, a ship appeared, not sailing, standing, as if nailed to the ocean, all white, with no flags, no crew, no name. Its deck was pristine, untouched by weather or war. An illusion, Briggs whispered, or a judgment. Tomas disagreed. It's a test, he said. For me, without asking, he ordered a rowboat lowered. No one followed. He crossed alone, the sea too still, his reflection too perfect. Climbing the ghostly ladder, he found the deck warm beneath his boots. He called out, no echo. He searched the quarters, empty, until he found the journal, bound in human skin, inked in blood. He opened it, and the pages whispered, not words, sounds, screams, songs, begging. The final page held his name, Tomas Finch. Beneath it, a question, do you accept? He looked up and found himself standing in a circle of salt. Figures surrounded him, not solid, but shadows of those he had buried. Elric, the mutineers, even the men he never knew by name. All watching. I didn't ask for this, Tomas muttered, but I'll see it through. He stepped out of the circle. The shadows vanished. The ship shuddered, and then, like ash, disintegrated into the sea. Tomas stood alone, floating. The boat had vanished. The sea had erased everything. But he didn't sink. When he awoke, he was on the deck of the widow's grin, salt crusted on his eyelids. The ruby was gone. In its place, a mark on his chest, a black circle burned into flesh. He said nothing. But from that day forward, he could smell storms before they formed. He could hear sails tearing 3 miles away, and he dreamed in other men's memories. The crew knew not to ask what happened. They only cleaned the deck where he had appeared, and never again spoke of white ships or books that screamed. Asterisk, they entered new waters, blue like sapphires, thick as honey. The charts were useless now. Tomas used the stars, but even they seemed to move. Then came the singing, faint at first, like a flute in a storm, then stronger. voices that curled around your bones, voices that sounded like the one you lost, the one you loved, the one you betrayed. 3 men threw themselves overboard before anyone could stop them. The water accepted them like lovers. Tomas ordered wax in the ears. Briggs poured rum down men's throats to keep them numb. Still, the voices came. They crept through cracks, through wood, through thought. They called Tomas by name, saw her, a shape rising from the sea. Not a woman, not a fish, a thing with eyes too deep, hair like seaweed, and teeth that shimmered like knives. She rode the waves like a queen, staring straight at Tomas. "You wear his mark," she hissed. Though no sound came, her mouth never moved, but all heard her. "You are his key." Tomas gripped the rail, heart hammering. "I don't belong to anyone," he shouted. The sea boiled. The siren laughed. "Then prove it," she said, and dove. The water exploded. Tentacles shot from below, wrapping around the hull. The ship groaned, boards splintered, men screamed. The battle was not of cannon or blade, it was will. Tomas stepped forward, arms out. "I command you," he shouted, "by the mark, by the name, by the blood." The ruby appeared in his hand, not summoned, not drawn, simply there. He crushed it. Light burst forth, blinding and white. Tentacles vanished. The siren screamed, a sound that broke the sky, then silence. When the crew awoke, the sea was calm again. The mark on Tomas's chest now glowed faintly. The crew didn't cheer. They didn't ask. They only bowed their heads when he passed. He was their captain now, not by choice, but by power. They sailed on, afraid of both, what chased them and what led them. Asterisk among the salvaged goods from a wreck near Skeleton Reef, the crew discovered an odd object, a compass with no needle, at least not a visible one. Tomas held it, and the lid snapped shut. When he opened it again, a faint blue flame danced where the needle should be. It didn't point north. It didn't point anywhere familiar. It spun when he thought, slowed when he felt fear. He kept it, Briggs warned him. Tools like that aren't made by hands, we understand. Tomas nodded, but didn't return the compass. At night, he opened it and watched it spin. It responded, 2 questions unspoken. When he asked about Elric, it stopped, burning steady in one direction, down, toward the ocean floor. Tomas closed it fast. The compass began to affect the ship. The stars shifted overhead when he held it too long. Storms swerved away from their path, but so did islands. They were no longer sailing toward places. They were sailing toward something Tomas had no name for. He stopped using maps. The compass was map and master now. One day, a sailor tried to steal it. Tomas found him in the night, screaming, eyes burned white, muttering in 3 languages at once. They tied him to the mast for his own good. He didn't stop shaking for 5 days. When he finally died, his last words were, "It sees you." The crew refused to look at the compass again. Despite the fear, Tomas used it. It led them to a hidden cove beneath a waterfall where they found fresh water, fruits, and a cache of Portuguese muskets hidden for 100 years. The reward was real. So was the cost. That night, 2 men disappeared. No blood, just boots, and the scent of sulfur in their hammocks. The crew began marking days with notches on the mast. They avoided speaking at night. They no longer drank. Even Briggs, began to show signs of cracking, mumbling prayers he claimed to have forgotten. Tomas remained quiet, focused. He knew the compass was using him, but he intended to use it back. The next morning, it pointed due south into uncharted waters, older than maps, deeper than memory. Tomas held it tight, the flame flickering. "We go," he said, and none dared refuse. They sailed into fog thicker than flesh, the kind that swallowed sound. Voices vanished after a foot. The ship creaked louder than the crew. Even the sea beneath them felt different. Not like water, but like something waiting. Tomas ordered all lanterns lit. The glow only deepened the darkness. They heard whispers. On the second day, shapes appeared. First shadows, then figures. Men, or what used to be, tall, thin, dressed in rags, soaked with salt. Their faces were smooth, blank as wax. No eyes, no mouths, just holes where memory should have been. They stood on the surface of the water, unmoving, watching the widow's grin float past. The crew lost control. One man screamed and jumped into the fog, vanishing instantly. Another began praying in tongues. Tomas stepped forward, compass in hand. "Let us pass," he said to the faceless. No reply, just slow turning heads. The sea groaned, the ship slowed, the fog thickened. Tomas opened the compass. The flame flared red. The faceless figures twitched. One stepped forward, extending a hand with too many fingers. Tomas did not flinch. He extended the compass. The figure touched it and screamed without a mouth. The fog exploded outward, revealing stars, waves, and sky once more. The faceless sank soundlessly. The crew fell to the deck, gasping. Tomas stayed on his feet, eyes never leaving the sea. "They weren't dead," Briggs said. "They were lost." Tomas nodded, and we nearly joined them. No one slept that night, not even the rats. The fog returned briefly each dusk, but never stayed. The compass now pulsed on its own. Tomas stopped carrying it at night. He placed it in a locked chest in his cabin, but sometimes he heard it clicking, like teeth chattering, or bones dancing on wood. They sailed faster now, not because of the wind, but because of what might be following. In the middle of nowhere, they found a ship that should not have been, massive, gilded, impossibly pristine. Black sails trimmed in gold. A merchant vessel, but not of any nation known. No flag, no name, only a door that opened without sound. A man stood at the rail, smiling, impossibly clean, impossibly still. "Trade?" he asked. Tomas approached. The man called himself the broker. He offered anything: charts to secret islands, cannons that never missed, gold that bred in chests in exchange. "Memories," he said. "Small ones, happy ones." He smiled as if offering candy. Tomas declined. Briggs nearly agreed. One crewman did, and instantly forgot his mother's face. The trade worked. The crewman received a bag of emeralds, but he spent the rest of the day weeping, unsure why. That night, Tomas opened the compass. It spun violently. When pointed at the broker's ship, it stopped, then reversed. Tomas took that as answer enough. They left without trade, though the broker's smile never wavered. "We'll meet again," he said. "You'll have less to forget." As they sailed away, his ship didn't shrink in the distance. It stayed the same size, always visible, always watching. Days later, the crew began losing things. first memories, then instincts. One forgot how to tie a knot. Another forgot what stars were. Tomas locked the compass again. It pulsed red. The broker had marked them. "We left the deal," Briggs said, but the door was already opened. Tomas knew they couldn't go back. They could only go forward. He marked the ship's location on nothing, just carved it into the mast with his dagger, in case memory failed. The crew began drawing symbols in chalk near their hammocks, names, faces, fears, their humanity, in case they forgot it. The sea was no longer the threat. Their minds were. Asterisk, on the 7th morning after the broker, the ship drifted into unfamiliar waters glowing faint green under the sun. They passed through a graveyard of ships, galleons, caravels, warships, all sunken, yet still visible beneath the waves like sleeping beasts. Tomas ordered silence. No drums, no calls, no songs. "Let the dead rest," he warned. But the dead were listening. At noon, a ripple shook the water. Then another. Cannonballs rose. Yes, rose from beneath and shot through the air in reverse. The crew scattered. One ball passed through the sails and vanished into the clouds. No sound, no fire, just impossible, deadly movement. Then came the singing, soft voices, like children in a chapel, echoing from the cannons themselves. The starboard cannon exploded outward, not from use, but from within. Something had tried to come out. A face appeared in the smoke, eyes weeping blood, lips stitched shut. The song grew louder. It was a lullaby, twisted. Tomas ran below deck, the compass in hand, the flame flickering in agony. It spun, stopped, then cracked. The compass had never cracked before. Tomas grabbed the cracked glass and sliced his palm. Blood dripped onto the ship's mast. "I name you safe," he shouted. "I name you sacred." The song ceased. The air calmed. The broken compass dimmed, then fell still. All cannons fell silent. The crew stood stunned, some bleeding, some weeping. No one knew what had happened, but they felt it. The sea had tried to turn the ship into an offering. Briggs knelt beside a sailor who had been struck by a rising cannonball. Half his chest was gone. Still, he whispered, "They were singing to me." Those were his last words. The men buried him at sea with no ceremony, too shaken to chant, too afraid to speak. Tomas ordered every cannon scrubbed with salt and lime. He oversaw it himself, knife still in hand. He traced protective symbols from the code runes. No one recognized, yet none protested. His blood was now their seal, his madness their map. The ship sailed on, now marked by song. And somewhere below, in the bones of the ocean, something waited to sing again. Asterisk, the ocean warmed without warning. Fish floated to the surface, eyes boiled. Steam hissed from beneath the hull. The crew sweated, stripped, prayed. Lamas ordered. Barrels of water dumped on the deck. It dried instantly. The sky remained clear, the sun cool. But this heat did not come from above. It came from below. On the 3rd day, the sea bubbled, not foam, but true boil. Tomas dropped a silver coin tied to string overboard. When he pulled it back, it was melted. Panic rose. Volcano, Briggs guessed. Or worse. Tomas opened. The second compass, not cracked, not marked, but gifted by the broker. He had never used it until now. The compass spun once, then stilled, pointing straight down. Beneath them, a chasm, a wound in the earth. Fire raged inside. but not natural. Shapes moved within the magma, ships, men, beasts, some burning, some screaming, none truly dead. The crew backed away from the rail, unable to look. Tomas stared longer than he should have. He saw a face, Elric, burned, but grinning, holding the same ruby Tomas once crushed. He raised it like a toast, then was pulled down by black tendrils. Tomas closed the compass. "We don't speak of this," he said. "Not ever." They steered west, sails groaning under sudden wind. The sea cooled, the air cleared, but nothing truly left them. That night, the hull burned from within, not with flame, with glow. Faint red runes appeared, pulsing across the floorboards like veins. Tomas pressed his palm to them. They did not hurt him, they welcomed him. The crew kept their distance, whispering of devils and saints. Tomas said nothing. He simply walked barefoot across the glow dot at dawn. The runes faded, but the ship moved faster than wind. It glided like shadow, turning without ropes, sensing the sea before it shifted. It was no longer a ship alone. It was alive and bound to something far older than the ocean itself. The fire below had marked them all, not with heat, but with hunger. Asterisk then came the stillness, not quiet, dead. The sea turned silver, like polished glass. The sky reflected below. The stars shimmered in both directions. The sails hung limp, and sound ceased entirely. When they spoke, no echoes returned. The ship floated in perfect reflection. But it was not reflection. It was something else. Tomas peered over the edge and saw the widow's grin beneath, but wrong. The sails were torn, the crew dead. He saw himself hanging from the mast, eyes, open mouth full of seawater. He staggered back. "Turn us," he screamed, but the wheel wouldn't move. It spun in place, clicking like a music box. One sailor dropped a coin overboard. It never splashed. It hovered, then fell up into the sky. Another sailor vomited, then collapsed. His shadow rose and stayed standing. It stared back, unmoving. Tomas closed his eyes, but the images remained. Not visions, warnings. "We're not meant to be here," Briggs muttered. "This is the space between." Tomas opened the broken compass. Its glass repaired itself. The needle spun counterclockwise. Then it stopped, not pointing anywhere, but shaking. He slammed it shut. "Drop the anchor," he ordered. "Let it remember. Wait." They did. The anchor hit something. Not water, not earth, but something solid. And the sea cracked. The sound was deafening, like the shatter of bone. Waves returned. Sound returned. The sky shook, and the reflection below turned black. A scream rose. Not human, not animal, but of a world realizing it had been seen. Then silence. The sea was sea again. Tomas ordered full sail. No one spoke. No one dared. They passed through the line of shattered reflection, like breaching the surface after drowning. But something had crossed with them, something unseen, something waiting. That night, every mirror aboard was found shattered, even the ones they didn't know they had. Asterisk, the ship moaned louder now. The boards creaked, not from age, but from voice. Whispers came through the grain. In the dark, they echoed beneath hammocks. Some said the ship was remembering. Others said it was speaking. Tomas knew both were true. A soul had awakened in the wood, and it had things to say. The first message was a song one only children remembered, the kind sung by mothers long dead. Every crew member heard a different version. One man sobbed for hours, another went mute. Tomas listened carefully. His version was in a language he'd never learned, but he understood every word. Briggs approached him at night, eyes bloodshot. "I dreamed I was the ship," he said. "I was made of wood, and I was burning." Tomas nodded. "That's how it starts." The quartermaster placed a pistol in Tomas's hand. "If I forget who I am, use this." Tomas placed it in his coat and promised nothing. At dawn, carvings appeared on the rails. Names, dates, coordinates, some from the future, some from centuries past. One name glowed red, Tomas Finch. Beneath it, last captain. He traced it with his fingers. It didn't burn, it pulsed. The ship knew. They began seeing lights beneath the waves again. Not creatures, but symbols. Runes matching those on the hull. The ocean had begun to reflect their ship, not their ship reflecting the ocean. Tomas understood. The Grin was no longer sailing through the sea. The sea was sailing through her. That night, Tomas stood at the helm, bare feet on the boards. He spoke aloud, not to the crew, but to the ship. "Where do we go next?" he asked. The wind rose. The compass opened itself, and in a voice that echoed like a drum in his bones, the ship answered, "Home." But none aboard had ever known a place by that name. After weeks adrift in waters that knew no map, they saw it, a city on the coast, glowing faintly under a blood-colored moon, towers crooked like broken teeth, streets flooded with brine. No sound came from it, no birds circled, but the docks were intact. "No port on any chart," Briggs whispered. Tomas said nothing. He knew. This was the port from his dream, the one where everything ended. They dropped anchor and rowed ashore. The buildings were hollow, windows shattered inward, doors hanging open. Statues lined the streets, all of people mid-scream, hands raised, eyes wide. One sailor touched a statue's face. It cracked and turned to salt. Tomas picked up a coin from the gutter. It bore his face. A future that hadn't happened yet, or had already passed. They reached the central square. At its center stood a fountain, still flowing, though the water was black. Around it, 13 skeletons sat at a stone table, swords pierced there, chests, cups in their hands. Tomas approached, drawn by a force he didn't understand. One of the skeletons wore a coat identical to his own. Its jaw hung loose, as if trying to speak. A bell rang, once, twice, 13 times. The sound came from beneath the earth, vibrating through their bones. The sky dimmed further, and the city sighed, not with wind, but memory. "This place remembers us," Tomas muttered, "even if we don't." He took the coat from the skeleton. It fit perfectly. Back at the ship, the crew was shaken. Some refused to return to the city. Others begged to leave immediately. But the anchor would not rise. The chains had grown barnacles, rusted in hours. Tomas understood something needed to be done. Something left unfinished centuries ago. He returned alone that night, holding only the broken compass and a blade. Inside the old cathedral, he found a mirror, not silver, obsidian. His reflection blinked when he didn't. It smiled. Tomas did not. He drew the blade and touched it to the mirror. It cracked, then shattered. The wind roared. The statues screamed, and the anchor came free on the ship. He returned before dawn, coat damp with dew, compass pulsing. The city was gone by morning. Only open sea remained, and salt in his boots that never dried. Asterisk, the mark on Tomas's chest began to itch. At first, he ignored it, but by the third night, it bled. Symbols emerged around it, not scars, not burns, but ink that surfaced from beneath the skin. The crew noticed. They stopped calling him captain and began calling him marked. He didn't correct them. He no longer felt like Tomas. He felt like something that wore his name. In the darkness, the mark glowed. It pulsed in rhythm with the ship's movement, as if they were linked body to wood, soul to sail. Briggs grew distant, watching from shadows. "He's becoming it," he whispered to the cook. "He's not steering anymore. He's being steered." No one argued, but no one stopped him either. One sailor confronted Tomas, knife shaking in his hand. "Give the ship back," he demanded. "You're taking us into hell." Tomas didn't reply. He placed his hand on the man's forehead, and the sailor dropped to his knees, weeping like a child. The next day, he volunteered for the crow's nest and never came down again. The mark began to affect the ship itself. Wood bent toward Tomas's steps, ropes untied before he touched them. Lanterns flared when he passed. He no longer ate much nor slept. When he did dream, it was not of sea or sky, but of deep places where time folded like cloth and ships sailed upside down. One evening, he stood at the helm, chest bare. The mark shone like a lantern, casting light ahead of them in waves. In its glow, sea monsters veered away, storms split apart, but so did the minds of weaker men. One sailor gouged his own eyes, another tried to swim into the horizon. Tomas wept only once when he saw their fear. Briggs cornered him. "You have to let go," he pleaded. "You're binding yourself to something no man should hold." Tomas replied, "Then I am no longer a man." He smiled. It was not cruel, it was empty. A boy who had lost everything and gained more. Then he could carry. That night, Tomas locked himself in the captain's quarters. When he emerged, the mark had spread to his throat, and his voice was no longer only his. Asterisk, the sea turned black again, but not like before. This was not absence of light. This was presence of something older than darkness. The stars vanished. The moon refused to rise. The compass spun itself into splinters. Tomas stood still. "We're here," he said. The gate, the water, boiled, not from heat, but from vibration. A ring of light appeared, far below the waves, a circle big enough for a fleet. From it rose a spiral of obsidian stone, reaching toward the sky like a finger beckoning God. The ship moved on its own, sails full, despite no wind. The crew prayed, not to be saved, but to be remembered. They circled the spiral 3 times. Each lap brought change. On the first, the sea stilled. On the second, they forgot names. On the third, they saw themselves, versions older, broken, burning. Tomas spoke in a voice layered with echoes. "Open." The gate did. A hole yawned, open in the spiral's base. Inside, stars that moved wrong, rivers of fire that flowed upward, ships drifting in air, broken and whole. Tomas stepped onto the platform. The crew did not follow. Even Briggs stayed back, lips moving in desperate prayer. Tomas walked alone, inside. He heard voices, not new ones, familiar ones. His mother, Elric himself. They argued, begged, warned. He ignored them. At the center, was a throne made of anchors. He sat, the gate closed. Outside, the ship drifted silently. Hours passed. Then, a heartbeat. The gate split open. Tomas emerged, changed, taller, eyes glowing like forge coals. The mark gone, replaced by runes floating around his body like dust. He stepped aboard, and the sea bowed. He had become more than captain. He had become legend. Asterisk legends inspire, but they also terrify. And terrified men fight. 3 sailors, bold or broken, plotted against Tomas. They poisoned the rum, sabotaged the sails, and carved symbols of rebellion into the mast. But the ship warned him, would moan. Ropes pointed. Tomas said nothing. He let the plan unfold. At the appointed hour, they crept into his quarters, knives drawn. They found him waiting, hands open. "You are brave," he said, "but this ship does not allow betrayal." The door slammed shut behind them. What happened next was never spoken of. The next morning, 3 hammocks were empty. Their boots were filled with seawater. No bodies, just silence. The crew understood. Tomas had not punished them. The ship had. The widow's grin now enforced its own justice. Tomas was no longer the wielder. He was the channel. Briggs confronted him again. "You've become what Elric feared," Tomas replied, "and what you all followed him toward." His voice carried thunder. The ocean stilled. A bolt of lightning struck the mast and burned no wood. The ship was no longer wood. It was memory. Fear turned to reverence. The crew knelt when Tomas passed. They whispered his name like a prayer. He hated it, but he knew it was necessary. To steer what they had become required more than sails. It required myth, and he was willing to carry it. He stood at the bow that night, stars returning above. The ship sailed without wind, without anchor, without time. Tomas wept, not for himself, but for the boy who once watched the horizon with hope and not command. He now knew there was no going back, only deeper asterisk. The sea began whispering names, names of crewmen, names from the past, names that hadn't been spoken aloud in decades. Sometimes the water would echo them in the splash of waves. Sometimes the name would be carved overnight into the ship's rail. Tomas knew the ocean was remembering them one by one, like a ledger kept by the deep. "She's counting us," Briggs murmured, "and she doesn't forget." It started small. A sailor heard his mother's voice. In the water, another saw the face of a drowned lover in the foam. But then came the visions. While cleaning the deck, men would freeze, eyes wide, staring into nothing. When Tomas asked what they saw, their answers were always the same: "My death." Some laughed after. Most didn single quotes. One morning, Tomas found an old logbook, not theirs, but written in his own hand. The pages were dated a century before he was born. It described the same crew, the same ship, and an ending that hadn't happened yet. Buried under the phrase, "Return to the womb," Tomas burned it. The ink screamed. Waves began to shape themselves into things. Hands, eyes, once even the outline of a door. The crew stopped bathing. They feared the water. Buckets were drawn with ropes, thrown back when shapes looked up. The sea was not a path anymore. It was a mirror. And they no longer liked what they saw. Tomas began carving runes into the hull, guided by instinct. He didn't understand them, but the ship did. The wood pulsed beneath his fingertips. The sail stretched higher when he passed. "She's becoming a cathedral," Briggs said, trembling. "A church that floats through time." Tomas nodded. "And I am her priest." The wind returned, but moved in circles. The ship spun slowly, then faster. They passed the same cloud twice. The same bird landed 3 times. The compass, long dead, began humming. Tomas touched it, and it turned to ash. They were no longer sailing the ocean. They were sailing memory itself. And memory, like the sea, only looks calm until it pulls you under. In the distance, sails, dozens, no flags, no wind, just ships, dead still on the water, as if anchored to the sky itself. Tomas raised his spyglass. No movement, no crew, yet every ship faced them as if waiting, as if guarding something. An armada, Briggs muttered, but of whom? Tomas did not answer. He knew the answer would cost them. They sailed slowly between the ghostly hulls, each one older than the next, from different centuries, different empires, some Roman, some futuristic, ships that hadn't been built yet, all of them empty but intact, preserved not by time but by purpose. Tomas disembarked on one. Its deck was clean, its helm moved, its beds still warm. Below deck, no crew, only mirrors. Hundreds, each reflected a different Tomas, old, dying, laughing, monstrous. He shattered one. The sound echoed through the fleet. The ships creaked in response. The widow's grin moaned. The ocean vibrated. Tomas backed away, unsure of what he had disturbed. A child's voice called his name. He turned and saw himself, younger, barefoot, holding a toy boat. "Don't go further," the child said, "or you'll forget what water is." Tomas blinked, and the boy vanished. Only his footprints remained. He ran back to the ship, heart pounding. Briggs asked no questions. No one did anymore. As they passed the final ship, the sun disappeared, swallowed by a shadow shaped like a crown. Darkness fell instantly, and in the quiet, a single bell rang deep, metallic, not from any ship, from the water. It rang 13 times. Then silence returned, heavier than before. That night, the crew dreamed the same dream. They sailed in reverse, growing younger with every knot, until they were born again into the ship's hull. Tomas awoke, crying. He didn't remember why, but the armada was now behind them, watching. Asterisk ahead lay an island, lush, green, perfect. Birds sang, water sparkled. It looked untouched by all the horrors they'd known. Tomas ordered caution, but the crew disobeyed, starved for land, for softness, for anything real. They ran ashore, laughing. For the first time in months, they smiled. But smiles fade faster than blood. The island responded. Every word spoken aloud, repeated back, not by echo, but by voice. Their own voices, but distorted, too slow, too fast, or too accurate. "I'm still hungry," one sailor muttered. The trees replied, "I'm still hungry." Then again and again, until he screamed. The jungle was thick, the flowers wide-eyed. They opened when spoken to. Tomas found a tree with bark that read, "You are already here." When he turned, he saw his own footprints walking ahead. He followed them. They led nowhere, and everywhere, by nightfall, the crew was silent, too afraid to speak. One man whispered a prayer, and the island screamed it back, loud enough to split bark. The ground shook. Birds fell dead. Tomas ordered everyone back to the ship, but the anchor wouldn't lift. Roots had wrapped it. He drew his blade and sliced the vines. They bled. The island groaned. It spoke then, through every tree at once. You do not leave what listens. Tomas lit the ground on fire. The flames moved too fast. They didn't burn. They consumed. As they fled, the shore crumbled behind them. A sailor fell and vanished into moss. No splash, just silence. The ship finally broke free. As they pulled away, the trees whispered, "Come back soon, Captain." Tomas stared into the smoke, unsure if he had just visited a place or a mouth. Either way, it would remember them. Asterisk, the sky began to change. The stars, once distant and still, now moved. They spun like wheels, dipped low toward the horizon, and some, impossibly, began to fall. Not shooting stars, but slow, deliberate descents, like gods stepping down from their thrones. The ocean reflected them perfectly, and for a moment the sky and sea were the same. One star fell directly into the sea ahead. No splash, just a pulse of light, like breath. The crew stared in silence. "It's not falling," Tomas whispered. "It's returning." From then on, no one slept. Each hour, more stars dropped. Some hovered above the water, like lanterns. Some circled the ship, humming. Tomas stood at the bow, arms open. He wasn't afraid. He felt recognized, as if something long buried was calling him by true name. "They're not stars," Briggs said. "They're watchers." No one disagreed. The ship moved on without wind, drawn toward a place not on maps, but in memories deeper than life. That night, a star touched the main mast. It passed through the wood, and the ship gasped, literally. A sound like breath came from the boards. Every lantern flared. The crew fell to their knees. Tomas did not. He touched the mast, eyes glowing. "We're seen," he said. "We must not blink." In the morning, the sky was empty. No stars, no sun, just a pale blue dome with no warmth. The world felt unfinished, as if God had paused creation. The crew avoided looking up. The sea remained calm, but beneath, shadows stretched in unnatural directions. A sailor tried to jump overboard, convinced the sky was drowning. The water swallowed him gently. Then a new star rose, smaller, red, pulsing with a heartbeat. It remained above Tomas's head all night, circling like a moon that chose him. When dawn finally returned, it didn't rise. It emerged from the sea. Asterisk, beneath the ship, something opened. Not a cave, not a whirlpool, a mouth, circular, vast, lined with stone teeth, singing a deep vibration only bones could feel. The widow's grin hovered above it, held not by water or wind, but by will. "This is it," Tomas said. "The place we've been sailing toward since before we knew." The mouth began to whisper, in no language, but all at once. Some men heard lullabies, others heard screams. Tomas heard his own voice, older, wiser, ending. He climbed the rigging and looked down. Inside the mouth were steps, spiraling, downward, made of old ships, fused together. Masts, sails, anchors, bones. He descended alone. The ship allowed it. The crew wept, but did not stop him. Each step echoed like thunder. The deeper he went, the more he saw. Memories trapped in planks, stories carved into hulls, names of captains long erased from history. All ships eventually came here, even ones that hadn't yet been built. At the bottom was a throne made of rudders and ropes. Around it floated a ring of skulls, all smiling. Tomas sat and they began to sing. He closed his eyes. The song was about him, about the boy with the ruby, about the ship that refused death, about the ocean that remembered everything. He rose hours later, or maybe years. Time didn't matter there. When he returned to the deck, the crew stepped back. His skin was darker, like salt-stained wood. His eyes were entirely black. He held a new compass, made of bone, bleeding, and alive. The mouth below closed gently. The ocean sighed, the sky blinked, and the ship moved forward once again, reborn. Not a vessel, a prophecy. Tomas said, only one thing, we go home. Asterisk the sea ahead shimmered oddly, like paper catching fire without burning. As the ship moved, names rose from the surface, written in foam, in water, in air. Crew members recognized some, mothers, enemies, forgotten friends. Briggs found his daughter's name in a wave. He wept and didn't speak again for days. Tomas explained, this is the path made of memory. Only the remembered may pass. The ship slowed. Those whose names did not appear felt cold. A sailor vanished overnight. Only his boots remained, filled with seawater and coins. No one asked where he went. The sea had claimed him with silence. Tomas wrote names on the mast, every crewman, every soul aboard. The names glowed faintly. If one began to flicker, that man would soon vanish. Some tried to carve false names. The ship rejected them. Splinters pierced their skin. Truth only, Tomas warned. Lies feed the sea. As they sailed, the names became louder, spoken by waves, shouted by gulls, whispered by wind. Some begged for help, some laughed, some warned. Tomas began losing sleep again. He heard the names in his dreams. When he woke, his own name was missing from the mast. Briggs offered to carve it back. Tomas refused. If I must be forgotten to finish this, he said, then let it be. The crew stared at him with both reverence and dread. They no longer knew if they followed a man or a curse. They sailed for 3 days on the path of names. Each day, one name disappeared. One man fell. The sea took them gently, without splash, without scream, until only 13 names remained, one for each rule of the code. The original code had 12 rules. Tomas added a 13th. He wrote it in blood on the wheel. It read, only the forgotten may command the end. The crew read it in silence. No one asked what it meant. They felt it. The ocean swelled with anticipation. The sky darkened. The ship creaked like it was breathing deep. Tomas gathered the last crew at dawn. 13 souls, weathered, hollowed, chosen. He read the rules aloud. For the first time in months, the wind stopped. Even the ocean seemed to bow. This ship will not return, he said, but it will not end. We sail into memory, to become story, to become warning. Briggs stepped forward. Will anyone know we lived? Tomas smiled faintly. Only if they fear the sea, and fear is the truest legacy. He handed each man a dagger made from old sails and bone. If the sea tries to take you, give it pain. They sailed into a storm shaped like a spiral. Not rain, not wind, just noise. The sea screamed. The ship glowed. The names on the mast burned. Tomas took the helm, marked once more, eyes dark, hands steady. Now, he whispered. Lightning struck every mast at once. The ship broke into pieces yet did not sink. The fragments hovered in the air, spinning slowly. Tomas stood on the wheel as it floated. Each piece of the ship became a page in the sky, a word in the ocean, a warning in every sailor's mind. Then silence, the sea calm, the sky cleared. Nothing remained but a whisper. Asterisk, in another part of the world, on a calm blue sea, a fishing boat spotted debris, a plank blackened by time, floating against the current. On it, a symbol no one could read, but every sailor feared. The captain hauled it aboard and never spoke again. That night, he burned his maps. Elsewhere, a boy dreaming of adventure drew a ship he'd never seen, one with sails shaped like wings and a captain with eyes of shadow. His mother asked where he saw it. He whispered it to me. The boy said, "The boy who became the sea." Legends spread of a ship that appears in storms, of a captain who bleeds salt, of 13 names that change every year and always end with silence. Mariners leave coins at docks. Whispers circle taverns. The widow's grin sails still, they say, but she carries no crew, only memory. Some nights, a ship-shaped shadow appears on the horizon. It never comes closer, but if you stare too long, you'll forget your name, and if you listen, you'll hear a code, not of law, but of blood. Briggs's journal washed ashore years later. It held no dates, only one phrase, over and over. He was only a boy, but the sea does not care. Scholars dismissed it. Sailors tattooed it. The compass reappeared in a museum once cracked dead, but no one could hold it. The glass cut every hand. It now rests behind glass, still bleeding, and if you press your ear to the glass, it still whispers your name. Asterisk, somewhere in the frozen north, a lighthouse began to glow, though no keeper lit it. Its flame was blue, and it burned without smoke. Fishermen avoided the area. It calls ships to her, they said. On foggy nights, you could see a lantern swinging just beyond reach, and then the fog would swallow the stars. The widow's grin returned in fragments, not wood, not sail, echoes, reflections in water with no source. A song hummed in harbors where pirates once drank. No words, just rhythm, the rhythm of ropes, cannons, oars. Some said they saw a figure walking the shore, boots soaked, coat torn, compass dangling. Children began drawing ships with black flags, though no one taught them. One girl sang the code in her sleep. When asked where she learned it, the water taught me. Her voice was not her own. Scholars called it myth. Sailors called it warning. Mothers prayed over their sons before letting them sail again. Taverns grew quiet when fog rolled in. No toasts, no tales, just eyes on the water. Because in that silence, sometimes, only sometimes, you'd hear the creak of a ghostly deck, and if you turned too quickly, you'd see a boy at the helm, staring back, salt trailing from his sleeves. Those who followed the sound too far were never found. Their boats floated back empty, not broken, not looted, just ... wrong, as if the sea had copied them. Inside carvings of names, all 13, one always unfinished, waiting. One sailor left a note before vanishing. She's building herself again, out of our fear, our dreams, our lies. The note was soaked in salt, but smelled like ash, and the handwriting changed halfway through. The last sentence was signed T.F. asterisk far across the world, on a shore where no ships had landed in centuries. A bottle washed up. Inside was a page not paper, but skin, written in a spiral. The message began. To the next captain, may you forget everything except the sea. The ink shimmered. The bottle was warm to the touch. A historian opened it. He disappeared. His desk was scorched. His coat was found at sea, 600 miles away. Since then, the bottle has changed hands 23 times. None kept it more than a week. It calls to the brave. It ruins the curious. The message changed with each owner. For some, it was a warning. For others, a map. A boy once read it aloud and dreamed of drowning for the next 19 nights. When he stopped dreaming, he spoke fluent pirate slang. His parents never taught him English. Eventually, the bottle was sealed in steel, dropped into the deepest trench. But it returned always to a beach, always near children, always when the moon turned red. No matter the language, the bottle now ends with, "The ship waits for your voice." Some say it's Tomas, still trapped between waves and words, casting his story across time like a net. Others say the ship lives now in every storm. The compass in the bottle spins when held over salt water, and the 13th rule is etched on the glass in every language. Asterisk, centuries later, a man with no home walks from harbor to harbor. He wears boots too old, a coat too dry, and a ring of names stitched in red. He speaks little, but when he does, his words taste of wind. He never sleeps on land, only on the edge of docks. He carries no money, but he's never turned away. About him makes barkeeps forget to charge. Sailors give him their last bottle without knowing why. Dogs never bark at him. Children say his shadow doesn't match his steps. One night, a young sailor offered him a coin. The man stared, shook his head. "It's not weight that matters," he said. "It's what you're willing to leave behind." The sailor didn't understand until his ship was found, floating the next week. His name carved into its mast. The man carries a broken compass in his pocket. He never looks at it, but when storms rise, it hums. And when it hums, the sea calms. Old men in port towns claim he's a ghost. Others say he's Tomas. Some say he's the ship itself, wearing skin just long enough to warn the next dot once. He told the boy, "The sea remembers everything, especially us." Then he vanished. No splash, no sound, just mist where he stood. He returns when names are forgotten, when maps lie, when silence falls over the tide. He is the ghost of every captain who kept sailing when they should have stopped. Asterisk, one day, in the middle of a calm ocean, a freighter stopped moving. All instruments failed. The crew panicked, but the sea was still. And then it appeared. Black sails, crimson trim, no sound, no wake. The widow's grin rose from beneath, not like a ship, but like a memory being remembered too hard. It hovered, unmoving, watching. The crew tried to signal. Nothing. Then the compass on the freighter spun, cracked, and whispered, 13. One by one, sailors dropped to their knees, overwhelmed with names they didn't know but couldn't forget. They saw faces, not ghosts, memories, entire lives, ships, storms, betrayals, loves, loss, all of it in a heartbeat. The grin didn't attack. It didn't speak. It simply existed. And that was enough. Hours passed. When it vanished, the freighter's clock had skipped 2 days. No one remembered eating. The ship left behind a plank with carvings of a new name, not from their crew, When they researched it, they found an obituary from 1713, a pirate hanged in Jamaica. But the photo in the newspaper was of one of their own. Now, the widow's grin returns every 13 years, always to a ship, always for a reason. Those who see her, change. They remember things they never lived, and those who try to forget, disappear. Asterisk. Legends say stories end, but not this. 1. The widow's grin was never a ship. She was the promise of the sea, that nothing is ever truly lost. Not souls, not names, not voices swallowed by waves. She exists where memory and ocean meet, and she always returns when we stop believing in her. Thomas Finch is no longer a name. He's a current, a wind, a pressure in your chest when you stare. Too long into the fog. Some say he escaped the ship. Others say he became it. One thing is sure. No one hears his name without tasting salt. The ocean still whispers, the code not allowed. But through the creak of wood, the crack of sails, the song of gulls. And those who listen, know, a ship is coming, not to take, but to remind, that what we forget remembers us. If one day you feel the sea watching, it is. If one day you wake from a dream with a compass in your hand, it's time. If one day you look at the horizon and see black sails with crimson seams, run or bow, because the widow's grin never ends. She simply waits.